This is Audible.
Thank you. I'm ready. Yes, sir. I'm ready.
My apologies to you that have heard this twice before, but there are some that haven't been here. On behalf of the State Board of Education, I welcome you to these hearings. My name is Steve Abrams. I'm chair of the State Board of Education and also chair of the Science Subcommittee. My fellow board members on the subcommittee are Mrs. Connie Morris and Mrs. Kathy Martin. The purpose of the hearings that will be held today are to assist us as State Board members in understanding the complex and oftentimes confusing issues regarding science education. A brief history of how we arrived at these hearings may be helpful. In June of last year, a statewide committee appointed by the Commissioner of Education and comprised of 26 public and private educators spanning elementary, primary, secondary, and post-secondary levels, retired educators, curriculum coordinators, and private practice physicians began the process of reviewing and revising the state science standards. The writing committee met several times between June and November and presented a draft of the standards to the State Board in December of 2004. At the same time, 8 members of the writing committee submitted what is now referred to as the minority report, asking the State Board to consider some changes to the draft. Through much discussion at the State Board, a subcommittee, the 3 of us, was formed to further examine the issues contained in the minority report. Also, after much discussion, it was decided the best forum to address the issues was via hearings, such as these we'll have today. In order to conduct the hearings in a reasonable time frame and in a civil manner, there are a few house rules and procedures that you, the audience, and indeed all of us should be aware of. First, we're on a tight schedule. We have many witnesses today, and it is critical that we stay on schedule. In order to do this, I request that no comments come from the audience. The expert witnesses have come from quite a distance to present their information. We should allow them every courtesy. We should not have display of support or opposition by yelling, applause, and so forth. In addition, we would also ask that each of you, every one of you, turn off your cell phones. Each expert's testimony has been given an allotted amount of time as determined by the presenters. Following the expert's presentation, the legal counsel for the opposing viewpoint will be given half that amount of time to ask questions. Following that, we, the subcommittees, will be given half of that time to ask questions. For example, if an expert testifies for 20 minutes, the opposing counsel will be given 10 minutes for questioning, and the subcommittee members will be given 5 minutes for questioning. The time for questions will be adhered to. Therefore, the questions should be succinct and not sound like a speech. We will take one 15-minute break this morning, break for lunch at 12, resume at 1 o'clock with another 15-minute break this afternoon. We'll try to end on or about 5:30. Additionally, please note that Memorial Hall does not allow food or drink in the auditorium. We would greatly appreciate it if you would abide by this policy. I'd like to introduce some people. Mr. Pedro Irgana-Garay is over here for the majority, and Mr. John Calvert is on the other side for the minority. Additionally, a court reporter is recording all the proceedings, and a transcript will be made available to the public at a later date. Thus, to those that are speaking, please enunciate clearly and don't talk on top of each other. As an aside, particularly for the media, the witness testimony presented immediately after the break will be by phone. The phone will be right here on the stage. I thank you for your interest in Kansas education. Mr. Calvert.
Thank you, Dr. Abrams, Chairman, members of the committee, Mr. Irgana-Garay, members of the writing committee, the public, and the media. I'd like to introduce you to my first witness today, who is Dr. Nancy Bryson. Dr. Bryson did her undergraduate work in biology at Mississippi University for women and earned a PhD in physical chemistry from the University of South Carolina. Good morning.
Good morning.
Dr. Bryson, as an introduction, would you please amplify a bit on your background and what you plan to talk about today?
Yes, sir.
I have a PhD in physical chemistry, 1982, from the University of South Carolina, and I've spent the last 20 years in higher education. I've been teaching chemistry at the college level for all of that time. I've taught at a variety of public and private institutions. And the reason that I am here is that in February of 2003, I was working at Mississippi University for Women, and I gave a presentation to our honors forum entitled Critical Thinking on Evolution. And the honors forum is a set of the most academically talented students at MUW. And in my talk, I presented some criticisms of evolution that I felt that the students might not have heard. And I also spoke about an alternate theory of origins called intelligent design. And the talk was very warmly received by the students.
Could I interrupt you for just a second? The forum that you were speaking at, was this a part of the ordinary curriculum, or was this an extra, in a sense, an extracurricular activity?
It was extracurricular. It was not a part of a class presentation.
Okay. And how long had you been at Mississippi University?
I had been there 1.5 years at that time.
And you previously had been teaching for some 17 or 18 years?
Yes, sir.
And what was your position at Mississippi University then?
I was the head of the Division of Science and Mathematics.
So that was a reasonably responsible position that you held?
Yes, sir.
And again, could you give me a bit of a background on why you were teaching this particular extracurricular course?
In the fall of 2002, there was a call for professors to speak at the honors forum. There was an open invitation for people to submit topics on which to speak. And I sort of wanted to introduce myself to the university and some of my interests to the university. And so I submitted my topic, critical thinking on evolution, as a topic that they might want to accept for presentation at the honors forum.
Had you been teaching that particular subject in your physical chemistry courses or otherwise? And
no.
What triggered your interest in that particular area?
In the early 90s, I had an undergraduate degree in biology and had really come along probably believing that evolution was more or less true. But in the early 90s, I started doing some independent study, reading some things out there. And by the time that I had given this talk, I was pretty well convinced that there were a lot of significant criticisms of evolution. And I just thought that I would like to present them to the students.
Did you, and I think you mentioned that, let me ask you this, have you done any other presentations on the same subject matter, or is this a totally original presentation?
It was certainly the first time I had given such a presentation.
So you had, as I gather, you had a background in biology. You didn't really critically analyze evolution before, sort of accepted it, and then you decided at some point something triggered your curiosity, and you began to look at it and read about it, and this opportunity came up, and you thought this was an opportunity to express your views as to what you'd found?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, had you vetted your proposed talk with anybody before you presented it?
No, I had not. I had just proposed the topic to the director of the honors forum, and I had not discussed the presentation with anyone else.
Was there any reaction to that?
To the talk?
Yes, just
Yes.
to the title of it.
Well, apparently the director of the honors forum had talked to the biologist and informed them about the nature of this talk. And as I gave the talk, most of the biology faculty were present for the talk.
Well, if I could just interrupt
Sure.
a bit. I think you said that your honors, the guy that was running the honors program, received the title of your talk, and then he discussed that with members of the biology department?
Apparently he informed them.
Okay. And did you have any prior feedback from the biology
Yes.
department?
The evolution professor emailed me twice and asked if I would give him the specific thrust of the talk. And I was hustling to get this prepared anyway and didn't fully know, exactly what I was going to be saying. So I just said, well, why don't you come to the talk?
Okay. So what did you... Okay, so you didn't really respond, but you did get a inquiry about a talk that would critically analyze evolution.
Exactly.
Excuse me a second, Mr. Covert. Pursuant to the rules, I have an objection. This has nothing to do with science standards in Kansas. This has been a litany about complaints about something that happened when this witness was trying to give his speech.
This is
Let me finish.
totally out of...
Let me finish my objection, please. This record is being paid by Kansas taxpayers, and I believe that to have this record on this issue is irrelevant to the issues present. There's been absolutely no connection to the Kansas standards, and I would object to a continuance of simply a litany of complaints that occurred in other states and in a different situation. And for that, I ask that they get to the point.
Mr. Calvert.
This objection is totally inconsistent with the rules. The rules said that I would be able to do my presentations uninterrupted. This objection is simply one regarding relevance, and that is an inappropriate objection. And there is a huge amount of relevance between what this witness has to say and the issues in this proceeding. And
You're suggesting that there is relevance between what the witness is saying and what the Kansas science curriculum standards are.
Very definitely.
May I have a proffer?
I don't think a proffer is called for by the rules, because I think that the rules do not allow for this objection. Now, I think if the chair wants to change the rules, that's something else. But consistent with the rules, this objection is totally is not consistent with the rules.
I disagree.
I mean, right now we have spent...
Mr. Calvert.
Yes.
Mr. Eric Onagarai has made an objection. You have stated that it is going to be tied to the Kansas science curriculum standards.
Yes.
I would say proceed.
Okay. Ms. Bryson, I believe where we left off, and I would ask that a couple of minutes be added to my time here, because
so noted.
That simply the title of a topic that evolution was going to be critically analyzed generated significant interest by the biology department.
Yes.
Okay. Then, on the evening and the occasion, you presented your talk, and could you further amplify on that?
The nature of the talk or the response to the talk?
Well, just tell us about the talk and the response to it.
Well, in the talk, I brought up some of the criticisms of evolution that I've been reading about. For example, the Cambrian explosion is often not mentioned in general biology textbooks at the college level, and I think that presents a big problem for evolution. I also talked about the origin of life scenarios and the unlikelihood that any of those scenarios, for example, the Miller-Urey experiment, they have very little relevance to anything that I know about. I basically talked, those were my two basic points in my talk, I guess, the origin of life scenarios and the Cambrian explosion.
And then what was the reaction?
At the end of the talk, the evolution professor stood and read a prepared statement. He brought in a prepared statement, and he talked for about 5 minutes, and the gist of his statement was that what he said, this is a quote, "This is just religion masquerading as science."
And then what was the reaction of the students?
The students very warmly had received the talk, and they were appalled at his diatribe against me in the talk. And that was about it.
You had a line of students come up to you?
I had probably 15 to 20 students come and tell me they had never heard any of that.
Okay. What happened the next day?
The next day was a Friday, and about 5 o'clock that afternoon I was in my office, and my boss, the vice president of academic affairs, came in and told me that I would not be serving as division head the next year. And he suggested, though did not say directly, that I might not be on the campus at all the next year.
Did he explain why?
He did not, and I asked repeatedly why he would make this decision at this time. I'd never heard anything like that, and he just simply wouldn't answer. He said, "Well, I'm not required to give you any sort of an answer."
What did you do subsequently?
Well, one of the things that happened subsequently was I found out that several professors had been over to see him Friday morning, the morning after the talk, and complained about the talk. And my story was picked up by the American Family Association, and there was a big outcry in the state of Mississippi about the whole issue. But ultimately, I was dismissed from my division head position.
But the decision that was made the day after your talk was temporarily reversed?
After about 3 weeks of public outcry, it was temporarily reversed. But for about 3 weeks, the president and the VPAA stood by that decision.
And then I think you said that subsequently that decision was reversed again. And could you explain the basis for the second reversal?
Yes. When my faculty evaluations came out in the late spring of 2003, they were indeed very negative. The previous year, which was the only year I had had a faculty evaluation there, they had been overall positive. And nothing had ever been said to me about any problem with my evaluations. So the president of the university said that on the basis of those negative evaluations that I would not be division heading.
Obviously, you have a bias in the matter, but in your opinion, were the evaluations in any way soundly based, or were they based upon what you perceive to be misinformation or whatever?
Certainly, I don't think they were soundly based. In my time there, I got the only grant that anyone had gotten. I had worked hard. I had done everything. I've written all the reports, managed the budget, kept it in the black. I think I was doing a good job with my position.
I think you mentioned that at some university you'd received the Bear Hug Award.
Yes.
What? Tell me about that.
That's just a name. That was just a name for the award given to the faculty staff member of the year, and this was at Shawnee State University. That was about a 3,200 student university. It was just basically a teaching award for being a good teacher and good division head.
And when was this award granted in relation to the time you were terminated?
I got that award in the year 1999, I think.
So that was 2 or 3 years before your termination at
yes.
the Mississippi University?
Yes.
Mississippi University was your alma mater, is that right?
Mississippi University for Women, yes.
And that's where you got your first degree?
Yes.
How has this incident impacted your career?
Well, I was allowed to stay at MUW as faculty member. I stayed on one additional year as out of the division head position. I certainly felt in that year, and I anticipated staying on at MUW. It's my alma mater. I love the school. I certainly feel that I was harassed in that next year by the new division head. I knew that I could never get tenure there. And so I moved on to Kennesaw State University, where I'm now teaching as a one-year temporary.
Have you had an opportunity to review the proposals contained in the minority report?
I have.
And could you comment on? Well, let me back up a bit. The incident that you were involved in would appear in which you were simply trying to inform students about criticisms of evolution, many of which I assume that we've heard during the last 2 days, resulted in a significant personal sanction. Is that correct?
Yes.
And do you think your circumstance is unique?
No.
What do you base your no decision on?
Well, I don't really know the details of all this, but I think that other people have gone through the same thing. Roger DeHart and others.
Do you feel like within the biology classroom there is academic freedom where teachers and students can candidly discuss this theory?
There is absolutely not academic freedom, and I, subsequent to my talk, students would come by and talk to me about that, and when they saw the battering I took, actually they were a little bit afraid to talk to me, so they would come by after hours, and they told me directly that you couldn't challenge, you couldn't ask any questions in the evolution class. That's the truth. So on that campus, the whole incident had a very chilling effect, and I guess the chilling effect was already there, but my incident just brought it out.
I think I asked you if you read the minority report.
I have looked at the minority report,
okay.
Yes.
And I take it, what is your assessment of the proposals relative to Kansas standards for providing guidelines to teachers on how to conduct this discussion of evolution?
Well, the things in the minority report, the revised, the proposed revisions, the things that struck me as being very good were, one thing, that there should be additional information presented on evolution. For example, the Cambrian explosion. I think that's great. I think, why wouldn't you present all of the information to students? I also think one of the things that I noticed was that you're redefining the definition of science. So we're not necessarily excluding science to be. We're not necessarily giving a naturalistic definition. So, as I recall, you reposition that word natural. So, in other words, you would allow more than methodological naturalism into the discussion. So
would you say that what happened to you at Mississippi University for Women was essentially an implementation of methodological naturalism?
Yes, I did.
It was essentially a way to enforce the rule.
Absolutely.
And you believe that the minority report would essentially remove that bias or rule from the discussion, and would that give the teachers academic freedom?
I think it would. Of course, just having the rule doesn't really necessarily ensure academic freedom, because there are all these subtle pressures in academia. Whether there are these subtle pressures where even if you follow the rules, you can be denied tenure for any reason. That need not necessarily be the true reason.
Do you believe that the issue of evolution and origins impacts religion?
Yes.
And what is the effect, in your view, of methodological naturalism as applied to the issue of origins, the origin of life, the origin of diversity of life?
Well, if we insist on methodological naturalism, then that is inconsistent and excludes any theistic ideas.
So it excludes evidence that would support a theistic view?
Yes.
And it permits only showing evidence that supports the other view?
Yes.
I don't have any further questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. O'Donoghue, 10 minutes.
I have a few questions for you that I'd like to place on the record first, please. First thing I'd like to ask you is, what is your personal opinion as to what the age of the world is?
I'm undecided.
What is your best guess?
I'm totally undecided.
Give me your best range.
Anywhere from 4.5 billion years to 10,000 years.
And of course, you have reached that conclusion based on the best scientific evidence available.
Yes.
Do you accept the general principle of common descent, that all of life is biologically related to the beginning of life? Yes or no?
No.
Do you accept that human beings are related by common descent to pre-hominid ancestors? Yes or no?
No.
What is your alternative explanation for how the human species came into being, if not from a common descent from pre-hominids?
From science, I have no alternative explanation.
In your personal opinion?
In my personal opinion, I believe there was an intelligent designer.
And when did that intelligent designer create the human species?
I'm not sure.
Now, that opinion that you have about intelligent design, that's not based on science, correct?
Correct.
That's based upon your theistic views.
Correct.
And you would agree with me that religion has no place in science.
Yes.
And you would agree with me that in a science curriculum, religion should not be included, correct?
Correct.
Have you read the majority report?
No, sir.
Have you read the minority report in toto?
No, sir. I've read a summary of the proposed revisions.
You've indicated that evolution has an impact on religion. Is that correct?
Yes.
You would also agree with me that at one point in the history of humanity, the argument as to whether or not the earth was the center of the universe also had religious implications?
Yes.
And you would agree with me that there was a time when scientists who argued differently were in fact shunned. correct?
Yes.
And you would agree with me that it is dangerous to mix science and religion, correct?
Yes.
I have no further questions.
Dr. Bryson, what were the two items that you discussed in your presentation that got you reprimanded?
I don't know what got me reprimanded, but the items I discussed in my presentation were, I spent most of my time on origin of life scenarios like the Miller-Urey experiment. And I feel very qualified to comment on that since my training is in thermodynamics. The other issue I discussed was the Cambrian explosion.
Okay.
Okay.
That with which you talked is that generally classified or characterized as neo-Darwinian evolution?
Yes, sir.
Is the method that neo-Darwinian evolution is how it is taught, normally taught in a methodological, naturalistic method?
Yes.
Is methodological naturalism another way of stating a philosophical claim? Is methodological naturalism and another method of another method of stating a philosophical claim?
Absolutely. Sorry.
Go right ahead.
My big point in my talk was you couldn't ever got the whole thing started. From my understanding of thermodynamics, there's no origin of life scenario, no prebiotic evolution scenario, no chemical evolution scenario that would have ever allowed for the self-organization of matter.
And so what do you base that on? I mean, what method of science, or how do you come to that decision?
My reading, and in my reading, it all made good sense to me thermodynamically. You just don't have that kind of self-organization occur. And there would be so many processes that would be occurring on the early Earth that would have prevented any self-organization. Dilution of amino acids in the ocean, the fact that amino acids combine in different ways, the fact that non-proteinaceous amino acids combine with proteinaceous amino acids. The whole scenario is utterly impossible, in my opinion.
Are you basing that conclusion upon empirical science?
I think so, yes. Yes.
How would you define empirical science?
That which we observe. So I looked at the observations of others and the writings of others, and filtering that through my chemical training, it made perfectly good sense.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I'd like to know, how did you feel your students' education benefit or did not benefit from being allowed to discuss such things in any of your classes?
Well, I just think it's incumbent upon any teacher to present the pros and cons of any theory. And for example, in chemistry, in general chemistry, we always present two theories of chemical bonding. And we say, here's the pros of this one and the cons of this one. Here's the pros and cons of this one. It's just amazing to me that we can't do the same thing in origin science. And the students, if you want to have a bunch of robots as your students, then you feed them just only the data that you want them to have. But if you want them to be critical thinkers, you give them all the data and let them decide.
Right. So regardless of if the data has not been accepted widely in the community of science, it's still, do you think, very beneficial for the students to hear critical data?
Very beneficial, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Calvert.
Thank you. Thank you very much,
Okay.
Ms. Bryson. Beg your pardon? Yeah, I will.
Mr. Chairman, as a point of order, throughout these hearings, the minority has relied on PowerPoint presentations that have been made part of this record. I respectfully request that you order the minority to provide us with the full disc or cassette or CD, whatever fashion they employed for these presentations. Those are important for us to have for the record, and I would also ask that those PowerPoint presentations be formally made part of the record in addition to the presentation that was made here about them.
Yeah. The slides we presented will be provided to the committee.
Not just the slides, the power presentations in total for each witness that was used.
The slides that were presented will be presented to the committee.
No. They have a power presentation that they use for each witness in order to have a complete and accurate record of what they have done and what they've relied on. It is only appropriate that the record include all of those PowerPoint presentations, and I respectfully ask that you order so.
I would suggest that the PowerPoint that has been used be presented. For instance, Mr. Iragonagaray, there was one of the witnesses yesterday that had 2 or 3 PowerPoints on his CD that we never even got to. He kept saying, no, that's not the one, that's not the one. And so, not all the PowerPoints.
That's right, and I
just the ones that have been referenced.
That's exactly correct.
There were PowerPoint presentations from which certain particular slides were taken. We want the PowerPoint presentation because it was what was used for the witness's testimony. Yeah. Maybe not all the slides were shown, but the PowerPoint was used as the basis for the question and answers. And I believe it is important that we have those. I've just stated my request.
Dr. Abrams, the rules, this is not a legal proceeding. Okay? And the rules don't provide for any discovery. And what Pedro is asking for is something that you might find, in a legal proceeding. What we are doing is providing to the committee what we are presenting to the committee. And we don't believe that there is any requirement within the rules or otherwise for us to do anything more.
What the committee would like to see and what ought to be in the record are those slides that were presented, that were discussed from.
We would be pleased to do that. Our next witness is Mr. James Barham. And Dr. Barham, I noticed on our bio there it perhaps needs to be corrected because it has a PhD after your name.
That's a mistake.
And I believe you're working towards that, but you haven't gotten there yet.
That is correct.
Would you please tell us a bit about your background and the work that you've done and the articles you've written and so forth?
Okay, I'm not quite sure where to begin. I was for many years a committed Darwinist. My understanding of I had graduate training in the history of science. I was in graduate school before when I was young. Never finished my PhD.
Where did you get your bachelor's degree?
University of Texas at Austin.
And what was that in?
Classics.
Classics, and then your master's degree was in what?
History of science.
The history of science.
I was working on ancient astronomy.
Okay. And you're now working towards a doctorate.
That's correct.
And when do you expect to complete that?
2 or 3 more years.
And what is your emphasis there?
History and philosophy of science.
Okay.
So my emphasis has switched from history to philosophy over the years.
Now, is it fair to say that you are an independent scholar?
Yes, I've been working as an independent scholar for the last 15, 20 years.
And could you explain what that means?
Well, it just basically means following my own interests, reading the things that I'm interested in, drawing my own conclusions, I've published about a dozen papers over the years, and I gather that one of my recent publications came to your attention. I got a call from you out of the blue, and that's why I'm here.
Okay. And the paper that drew my attention, is that contained in a book?
The debating design book?
Yes.
Yeah. I assume that's the one you were talking about, yeah.
Yeah. Would you tell us about that book?
About the book?
Oh, and your article. Just briefly.
Okay. Well, the book grew out of a conference that I attended at Concordia University in Wisconsin, and I was simply asked to contribute, the ideas that I had been developing over a period of time, over a period of about 15 years, which basically consists of two parts. A is a critique of the idea that natural selection is a complete and convincing account of evolution, and B, some trying to integrate some newer ideas in the sciences, such disciplines as nonlinear dynamics, condensed matter physics, as perhaps an alternative way of understanding the functional coordination, the teleology that I believe is real and objectively there in organisms.
Now, as an independent scholar, how does that distinguish you from other scholars? I mean,
well, I was not being paid by anybody to do this research. I was just doing it because I felt compelled to do it.
And you're not tied to any academic environment or university?
I wasn't until very recently. I re-entered graduate school 2 years ago.
Okay. Did you feel like you had ultimate academic freedom in that?
That's
as
right.
An independent scholar?
Yeah, nobody could tell me what I couldn't read, exactly, what I couldn't think.
Okay. And I think when we talked, you said that you have experienced 2 conversions in your life. Would you explain those?
Well, I would prefer to say a loss of faith than a conversion. But I was raised, I was born in Dallas, Texas, and raised as a Southern Baptist. But I lost my Christian faith very young, in the way that many people do, reading Bertrand Russell's Why I'm Not a Christian and other similar things, around the age of 12. And I was a convinced materialist, atheist, Darwinist for some 20 years. But I was extremely interested in the sciences. I was always interested in both the humanities and the sciences, hence my degree in classics, by working on a PhD in history of science. Then later, it just slowly, over the years, began to dawn on me that I couldn't reconcile these two sides of my life, of my interest. And on the one hand, I'm a human being interested in the arts and literature. I'm interested in the whole spiritual side of humanity. On the other side, I'm interested in the scientific account of how the human being fits into the universe, which is in complete conflict with the first account. So, my curiosity led me to try to think things through more deeply and to see how I could reconcile these two. And I came to doubt that natural selection was a complete explanation for the existence and the functioning of organisms.
In your book, or the article that's in Debating Design, what caught my attention was this quote. You say, quote, "The mechanistic consensus holds that the known laws of physics and chemistry, together with special disciplines such as molecular biology, fully explain how living things work. And the theory of natural selection explains how these laws have come to cooperate with one another to produce the appearance of design in organisms. According to the mechanistic consensus, design is not objectively real, but merely an optical illusion, like the rising and setting of the sun. On this view, living matter is nothing special. It is just chemistry shaped by natural selection."
Okay.
And that's what you describe as the mechanistic consensus.
Right.
Is that a fairly apt description of evolutionary biology as it is taught at the higher academic levels?
I think that's fair to say. It's the consensus mainstream opinion. There are, however, scientists who would dispute that.
Okay. Is it fair to say that a core claim of evolution is that the apparent design of nature is just an illusion?
Well, I mean, it's kind of a sociological question. I'm not a sociologist, but my impression is that, yes, that's the case.
And would you, okay. I'd like to turn your attention to a definition in the, by the way, have you read the Minority Report?
Yes, I've read it a couple of times. I don't know everything in it, but I've read it.
I want to turn your attention to the evolution benchmark, which is on page page 15.
This is the James Watson quote?
Beg your pardon?
My page 15 has the quotation by James D. Watson.
Well, the page 15, if you look on the screen.
Okay,
there,
I'll just look up there. All right.
Okay. On the left-hand side is a general description of biological evolution, and then on the right-hand side, the Minority Report has added some additional descriptive information. And the first sentence says, biological evolution postulates an unpredictable and unguided natural process that has no discernible direction or goal. Do you agree with that statement?
Well, I agree that the mainstream opinion is that.
Okay.
So when you say biological evolution postulates, if you interpret that to mean what most biologists believe, then yes, that's what they believe.
And the mechanism itself that you describe, is that mechanism itself that is postulated, does that mechanism produce a goal or a purpose?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
Natural selection, random mutation.
Okay. You're asking my own opinion or
yeah.
the opinion of the majority of scientists?
Well, in the opinion of the majority of the scientists.
Then no, certainly.
Okay.
Because the claim is that there is no such thing as purpose. That the very, the concept of purpose, value, meaning, all of these normative concepts are a simple illusion.
Okay. And, okay. I thank you. I believe you. My question is for you is, what is it that caused you to change your mind about the Darwinian story?
Well, there are a couple of things. First of all, as I mentioned, it just seemed to be inconsistent. On the one hand, the essence of human life is purpose and meaning and value, and yet the supposed scientific explanation for how we got here doesn't recognize any of these categories, so that in itself is a problem. But beyond that, it seems to me that the theory of natural selection simply presupposes the functional coordination of the organism at many points, so that as an explanatory structure, it was incoherent. You can't at the same time say there is no such thing as purpose and then presuppose purpose throughout.
Mm-hmm. You've I believe, written testimony, prepared remarks.
Yes.
Did you bring extra copies with you?
I have them. Unfortunately, they're in the trunk of someone's car. I don't have them with me, but I can get them.
Okay, and we will provide those to the committee. Could you go into a bit more detail about why you doubt the Darwinian mechanism?
Okay. Well, in the prepared remarks, I make a couple of basic points. First of all, I want to draw the simple distinction, which frequently gets overlooked, between the fact of whether or not evolution has occurred, on the one hand, and our theory, our explanation of how that's happened, on the other hand. I believe in evolution. I believe that we are here due to a process of common descent. What I'm questioning is whether the theory of natural selection, as it's usually presented, is a convincing and complete explanation of that. And the reason I tend to doubt that it is because it seems to me, if you examine the structure of the theory carefully, you see that it's actually presupposing the functional coordination that it's alleged to explain at many points. The basic problem is that all selection can do is winnow. It can't produce anything. So the question is, where does the coordination come from in the first place? An organism has to already exist, has to already be successful, has to already be a viable organism before it can be selected. So you've begged the question of the origin of the coordination, of the teleology.
So you think chemical evolution is a problem for...
That's a separate issue. I haven't studied that as deeply. It's a big problem. I agree with the previous presenters' remarks that we basically have no idea at present how it happened. I, as a naturalist, believe that there will be an answer found, but that's a kind of faith that I have. I can't give you an answer.
That is a matter of faith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Naturalistic faith.
Right. I take it that from your article that you don't particularly embrace the idea of intelligent design.
Well, when you were reading my remarks, I was wondering if you slipped, because I usually eschew the word design. I usually prefer the word teleology, because it seems to me that design is building in an answer to the question. I just want to pose the question.
Okay.
The apparent purposiveness is the question. That Darwinism, as a complete explanation, as a metaphysical system, claims that it's able to solve the problem, can solve the problem of. That's what I'm denying. But I don't want to say that there's necessarily we must therefore conclude that there was a mind external to the universe that was imposing the order. It seems to me that there could be other ways to explain the origin of purpose in the universe, of value in the universe, in organisms, from some kind of internal mechanism that we simply haven't discovered.
So I take it your position is that, and where you disagree with the Darwinian concept, the Darwinian concept poses a purposeless process.
That's correct.
And you think that there is real purpose there,
That's
and
correct.
The question is what causes it.
That's correct.
And you don't have an answer to that question.
Well, I have some ideas. But
you have some ideas.
They're tentative. I point to them in my article. As I said, there is some very interesting. There's interesting work being done in physics, in condensed matter physics in particular, how to get coherence from internal law-like processes, but not random processes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But it's a frontier field, and it's certainly premature to say that any particular theory is going to pan out.
There is a provision in the Minority Report on page 4. Which says, according to many scientists, a core claim of evolutionary theory is that the apparent design of living systems is an illusion. And I take it you agree with that?
Sure.
And then other scientists disagree. And would you agree with that?
Yes, there are scientists who would disagree with that.
Now, do you think it's legitimate for science to explore the disagreement?
Certainly.
Would you also, what is your comment about the third sentence? These standards neither mandate nor prohibit teaching about this scientific disagreement. Do you think that that's a reasonable posture given the present state of the science on intelligent design?
Yes, I do.
Okay. You have looked at the other provisions in the Minority Report regarding the teaching of evolution, the issue of historical sciences, and so forth. Do you believe that those are appropriate provisions, or that they call for student understanding that would actually enhance their understanding of biological evolution?
Yes, by and large, I was in agreement with nearly all of the The main quarrel I would have is, again, the failure to properly make the distinction between the fact of evolution versus the explanation for it. I wish that were made clearer, but that would be my chief criticism.
Well, how would you do that?
Just say what I just said. I don't think that. I mean, it seems to me that there's a conflation of issues. That one can argue that we can infer common descent directly from bodies of evidence, even in the absence of the theory of natural selection. And then it's a further question whether the theory of natural selection is a complete and convincing explanation of these facts.
Do you have any? It would be helpful to me if you could articulate your idea in writing.
Oh, well, I have these.
Do you have a particular suggestion there? Do you have it with you, or?
Well, again, I don't have them here, unfortunately. I left them in the car, but I can go get them and bring them in.
Well, I have a copy of your report here. Would that be of any help?
Is that the most recent version?
Well, I'm not really sure. It's called Test Prepared Remarks to PICA Hearings, May 7th.
I was still working on that up until yesterday, so I'm not quite sure. But anyway, yeah, more or less, that's it.
2 minutes.
We have 2 minutes. We probably don't have time for that, but it'll show up in your written testimony.
That's correct. I have them.
Okay. Do you think that, could you briefly explain your views on methodological naturalism and whether that is an appropriate construct to use in origin science?
Thank you for reminding me. I should have said that before when you asked me my opinion of the standards. There, too, there's a distinction that would be helpful to make, it seems to me. On the one hand, we use the word naturalism to mean that the natural world, the universe as a whole, is complete, and that we should not look outside of it to some transcendent realm for causal explanations. In short, naturalism is contrasted with the concept of supernaturalism or theism. On the other hand, sometimes we use it to mean avoiding any normative language, avoiding discussing things in terms of purpose, design, intelligence, avoiding these categories which are felt not to be properly part of science. I myself am a naturalist in the first sense, but I am denying that the second sense of naturalism need be the case. It seems to me that there's no good reason why we can't eventually expand our notion of what science, empirical science is. And there are people, that have some ideas about how to do this already. Whether they pan out or not is another question. But there are people, Robert Laughlin, won the Nobel Prize in condensed matter physics. It has a new book out in which he's trying to explain concepts of emergence. Stuart Kauffman is perhaps a better known name. They're certainly naturalists like I am in the first sense, but they're not naturalists in the second sense, in that they're saying that these categories are not illusions. They're real. They're objectively there. And we must find a new way of understanding them that goes beyond Darwinism.
So, you would find fault with, particularly in origin science, I suppose, of using a methodological naturalism that essentially denies purpose.
Yes, I would disagree with that strongly.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Barham. I believe Mr. Barham, Mr. Reganagari, your witness.
Mr. Reganagari, you have 10 minutes.
Sir, I have some initial questions for the record. How old, in your opinion, is the Earth?
Is it 4.5 billion is the accepted view? I would accept that. I have no reason to doubt that.
Do you accept the general principle of common descent that all life is biologically related back to the beginning of life?
I do.
Do you accept that human beings are related by common descent to pre-hominid ancestors?
Yes, I do.
Counsel, would you please put up page 15 for me, please? And by the way, sir, while he's doing that, did you take the opportunity to read the majority report in toto?
No, I've only read the summary of proposed revisions.
And who sent you those?
Mr. Calvert.
Did Mr. Calvert, in order to give you a fair and complete evaluation opportunity of cancer standards for children, send you the majority report as well?
I was given to understand that all of the relevant
No,
matter
sir, listen to my question. No, listen to my question, please. In order for you to have a fair and complete understanding of what the cancer standards are all about for Kansas children, did Mr. Calvert include for your review the majority opinion, commonly referred to as draft 2, yes or no?
I can't give a yes or no answer to that because of the way you phrased it. In order to have a complete...
Excuse me, let me rephrase the question. Did you receive draft 2 for your review?
If it's distinct from this, which is entitled Summary of Proposed Revisions, then the answer is no.